All right, now we will move into our prepared speaking portion of our Coaction Coaching 204, where Carrie Dugan will present Coaching to Collaboration. Carrie Dugan is a DTM and a Toastmaster of 4 years, but for over 25 years, she has worked as a senior researcher to bring user empathy to the forefront of overly technical software and applications. Carrie is a creative leader who helps others see their unfolding journey with the best outcomes by challenging themselves through exploring and learning. From her experience, she believes the most successful clubs are those that focus on preparation, motivation, and finding their creative pulse. Please welcome Carrie Dugan.
Thank you, Sarah. Fellow Toastmaster leaders, have you ever had a fear of the unknown? It's not so much what we don't know, but rather what we don't recognize. 12 years ago, I faced most of my fears in one place. I actually convinced my husband to travel 4 hours deep into the Amazonian jungle to a primitive primate research lodge. We encountered spiders, snakes, and scorpions during the day, and the scariest musicians composed of our jungle guides in a band called the Lady Killers by night. Most memorably, I elevated my fear of heights by being manually hoisted 150 feet into the canopy. The trees stood so firm as if the roots were clinging for their very life. With every heave of the rope, each segment became so intense that when I finally landed on the platform, I nearly fainted, and my legs no longer supported my weight. I clutched the zipline handle so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. Breathing was hard, really hard, as if I had just run the Boston Marathon. To be ready to step into a new story, you have to truly let go of the old story. I knew facing my fears in one place would help me turn that corner. During that trip, our guides helped me realize that what we do with this fear will make all the difference in the world. It took this experience for me to recognize that in becoming a club coach 12 years later was a difference I wanted to make, despite my fears of leadership. Stepping into the unknown path of leadership for me was like facing all of my jungle fears again. As is common in Toastmasters, there was no playbook. The first meeting I joined as a coach in 2019, there were about 5 of us total. I used my research skills and the same instincts I used in the jungle. The club felt familiar to my own background. When I started going to the club regularly, it felt familiar, yet it was completely different. I didn't work there. I was afraid of leaders and I dreaded being one. But I was suddenly in a position to help revive a Toastmaster club just by saying yes to whatever that meant. I spent the next couple meetings using my research skills, observing, listening, and asking questions. I held my breath, waiting for signs of politics. This is another fear of mine in the office outside of the jungle. But there wasn't any. The officers who gathered explained that the company had a major layoff and the more experienced Toastmasters had left, but they were all in to make their club great again. All in were the 2 words I heard and knew this club would be successful. They were ready to step into a new story. Through that year, their humility and commitment was solid, and each person learned and maximized their officer role and responsibilities. The best part of coaching was building off their ideas and their momentum until we all made it to President's Distinguished. It wasn't just a Toastmaster checklist, but rather a moment of true team collaboration and celebration. From my experience, 3 focus areas emerged as we worked together that year: motivation, teamwork, and membership growth. These became the ingredients to our success, both individually and as a team. Even before I joined as a coach, each officer decided on using coaching as a tool to rebuild their club. Stepping in as a coach had the best possible outcome because of this buy-in. In my opinion, coaching has 3 parts: seeing, inviting members to see opportunities differently, to act consistently with their goals. Number 2, say, inviting members to say what they are going to do and supporting their efforts. And 3, do, holding members accountable for their actions. The most effective ways to motivate is to create a shared understanding of the outcome, divide responsibility, and most importantly, take action towards outcomes and objectives, monitor progress at checkpoints during the year, and provide guidance and feedback for each other. From a research perspective, there is a direct correlation to problem solving through this framework in the complex business world as well. Teamwork naturally follows when every team member is contributing to their strengths, but also contributing in a diverse way from a social perspective and providing support of feedback, empathy, and continual practice. Doesn't this sound a lot like Toastmasters in general? Growing a club also supervenes when motivation and teamwork are in place. What's the reality of trekking in the jungle? Teamwork is key. Trekking in the unfamiliar jungle, far away from civilization, means that teamwork is crucial. New members felt this energy and learned by multiple examples we presented. As is typical in clubs, through membership throughout the year ebbed and flowed due to job responsibility and time commitments. It turned out that I even worked with a few of the members in past jobs. I knew their characters, so it was easier to offer advice on balancing work and Toastmasters. There were a couple of club officers who had to step down during the year as well, but all was not lost because they were also dedicated to finding replacements, and they were accountable to each other. One young officer now works for another company and is the head of a department. It's easy through these members to see the transferability of Toastmaster skills in the workplace, which is why we also create presence and momentum with HR when new employees came on board. Addressing the needs of each member was a key component to growth. From my experience, I would summon the courage to do whatever I could do to be a coach in any situation that arose. As new members were onboarded, the individual and group needs of the club changed, which meant going to nearly every meeting was important to guide the transitions. When you sign up to be a coach, be prepared to get out of your comfort zone. One moment, you could be filling roles, multiple roles, or randomly stepping in to speak. But coaching to collaboration, each of us took courage from our group, and we used the new experiences we had each meeting to not only help our new members, but also to learn about ourselves. To be ready to step into a new story, You truly have to let go of the old story. I know what you're probably thinking. Well, what if you don't have the motivation, the teamwork, or new members? The secret is to start with motivation. Help the officers understand the needs of the members, reinforce the club purpose, model the commitment to solving problems together, and share the vision, because this will establish and build the collaborative behaviors of the club. How does this translate to the business world? In this so-called creative economy, we need inspired, creative, and thoughtful employees. We need people who are situationally aware, able to spot risks and opportunities and make wise decisions. As a researcher, I can't help but create documentation. Let me bring up a few coaching suggestions I formulated through the year that I spent in coaching. If you don't mind if I share my screen. So the elements of leadership that I learned were designing an alliance, a covenant with the members of this club. It's always consensual and proactive. It's always strength-based, and it leads to empowerment. A real key principle that you really want to work at is creating a safe and challenging environment for all members so they can take risks. And that also requires honesty and openness. And you have to support and challenge beliefs or ideas, but you also have to remain neutral and detached, which is difficult when you're learning to be attentive to each member. And more importantly, you think, well, what could I do as a leader? Well, you really have to bring your own signature presence to this role. And that requires being your real self. You have to be a servant leader, build trust and empathy and commitment to helping them, and inspire and champion everything the club and individuals are doing. And as far as skill development, well, active listening is a huge part of this, as well as it translates directly into business management. Other skills you can use and develop are creativity, lightheartedness, and systems thinking, which is really how organizations and individuals work in a whole capacity around the outcomes of business, and self-management, of course. That's what I wanted to share with you. And I can put this, I created a PDF for you, and I'll put it in the chat.
Thank you so much, Carrie.
Back to you, Sarah.
That talk was short, but contained so much great advice, and you use so many deep words and thoughts. So I hope we can all talk more about this during the Q&A.